My name is Jenny Harden. I am conducting this interview on behalf of Unity Hospice. Today we are interviewing Rick Mesiano.
Mesiano.
The date is November 3rd, 2015, and this interview is being conducted in Elgin, Illinois. The purpose of this interview is to record the veteran experience of Rick for the Veterans History Project. Please tell us your full name.
Richard Peter Mesiano.
And what is your date of birth?
10/17/41.
And the branch of service that you served in?
U.S. Navy.
What was the highest rank that you had attained?
First class petty officer.
And you served before Vietnam, after Korea, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How long did you serve?
Total of 8 years.
8 years. So let's talk a little bit about your history. Where were you born?
New York City.
Okay. And what are the names of your parents?
My father's name was Joseph. My mother's name was Olga.
Okay. And what were their occupations?
My father was a wholesale shoe salesman. My mother was a housewife.
Okay. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I've got 2 sisters, one older, one younger, and a younger brother.
What are their names?
My older sister's name is Virginia. My younger sister is Lorraine. My brother, he was younger brother, I said, his name was William.
Okay.
Or Billy.
And do you have any kids? Any children?
I've got 2 daughters, one Jennifer, one Michelle.
Okay.
One daughter lives here in Hanover Park. I've got to think sometimes.
That's okay.
And my other daughter lives in San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. All right. Did any of your other family members serve in the military?
My father was in the Second World War.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What branch of service was he?
He was in the Army.
Okay. And what were you doing before you entered the service? Did you come right out of school? Were you drafted? What were you doing?
No, I was working at that time. After I graduated from high school, I went to work for Safeway supermarkets. I was a checker. And one of my regular customers came in one afternoon. She knew my name. She said, "Rick, would you be interested in working for Chase Manhattan Bank?" I said, "I'd be glad to." So she set up an interview with me through her son. And I went down there and interviewed, and they offered me a job in what they called their check-proof division. These were, I would enter checks that came in into a sorting machine, and then the regular accountant would sort through those checks and verify signatures and amounts and post them against the individual's account.
Right.
So I stayed with them for about a year, and my time was coming up for my yearly review, and I went upstairs. This was in Rockefeller Center, where our offices were, and I worked on the 2nd floor. No, that was later. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, with Chase, that's when I decided to go into the service. I was 16 years old when I graduated high school, so it was getting time for me to think about joining a military branch. I originally had an appointment to go see the local recruitment office, and while I was going there, right next door, I was going to go into the Army, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I said, well, I'll talk to them anyway. And I talked to the Army, and I wasn't very impressed. And I said, well, if I have to go into the Army, that means I'm going to be, doing a lot of marching or wherever it is. So I went next door to the next recruiter, and they were Navy. And he kind of impressed me the way he had things that he could offer me. And I said, that sounds interesting. Sign me up. So I went into, joined the Navy. went downtown to Lower Manhattan and passed the physical and was indoctrinated or enlisted into the Navy. And I spent my boot camp up here at the Great Lakes in Illinois. And after that, they gave me some tests and found out that I qualified as a communications operator. So I went off to Southern California, a place called Imperial Beach, which was south of San Diego on that little isthmus they call the Silver Strand, going up to they had a Navy base at the Imperial Beach, and I was stationed on that base for a while. And then when we got too crowded, they had a Navy installation up in on the Silver Strand, where they were also training Navy SEALs, I think it was at the time. So I went up there and slept up there and did my time up there, and then they'd have a bus come down to the communications station every morning. And so I was there probably about almost 6 months. And because I did real good in that class, in that school, they sent me to San Angelo, Texas for teletype school.
What is teletype?
Learning how to use a teletype machine.
Okay.
Where the other school I was at was learning Morse code. So this was like one step up.
Right.
And I says, to me, that's more sophisticated and more challenging. So I graduated from that school, and from what I remember, I originally had orders to go to Adak, Alaska. And one of the other guys in my class said he'd volunteer. So he volunteered to take my place in Adak, Alaska. And they changed my orders to Bremerhaven, Germany. So I went to Bremerhaven and was working there in communications. So not too much happened in Germany except a few minor skirmishes between me and some of the other. We were stationed with the Air Force and stationed with the Army there, so everyone had their territory that they hung out in down in town of Bremerhaven. And there was always usually a little conflict between the bars where everybody hung out. So nothing major ever happened there. So after my 2 years stationed in Bremerhaven, I flew back home, back to the East Coast, and I was stationed at the Brooklyn Navy Yard for a while, and helping out there. And then I got orders to report aboard ship. So I caught a bus going down to Norfolk, Virginia, and went aboard ship called the Private Jose Valdez, which was a communications research ship, communications and oceanographic research ship. While aboard there doing my duties as a young seaman, I had an accident. I was going ashore one night and walking down metal stairs on the outside of a ship that we were moored next to. It was raining out. I slipped on the gangway going down the stairs and dislocated my shoulder. So I remember going to a local little doctor's office, and when I got there, I had some, I don't know if it was a doctor or an intern or what, but he says, just a minute, and he went back inside, and I could see where he was going. There was a body on a stretcher in there, and I didn't know if the body was alive or dead, but he had an assistant come, they picked the body up and put it on the floor. So they brought me in, gave me some shots, pain shots for my shoulder, and they relocated my shoulder. So I went back aboard ship, and I was on kind of limited duty for a while until my shoulder healed up.
Right.
So I did probably about a year aboard ship there doing my duties. And we went south from the States, visited one of the islands. I forget what islands they were. But while we were heading down that way, we crossed over the equator. And I earned the title of being a shellback for crossing the equator. So, that's, earned that distinguished title.
Right.
And then we visited a couple of countries down in South America. And then we went through the Panama Canal. So that was an experience too. It was almost like going through Disneyland with all the lights and you see all
Right.
the other ships and everything else. So then we went through the canal and it started going down the west coast of South America. That was my second ship was on. I had a story about that, but this story happened in one of the ports that we hit in South America. At the used to sit around the table at night in the mess hall playing cards or playing Monopoly. So I made the comment to one of the guys, I says, all these new countries that we're visiting, how do they keep track of the different countries that people come aboard or come ashore with? So I come up with the idea, I says, we ought to take some of this Monopoly money and bring it ashore and see if we can pass it off. So when we got into port the next day, that's what I did. I took some of the Monopoly money, and the first bar we hit, a couple of us guys ordered a beer, and I said, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. I put down the Monopoly money on the bar, and of course the bartender says, what's this? I says, oh, they didn't want us to spend any of the American dollars while we were here, so they had somebody from the money exchange come
You had the whole
aboard.
story.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm a little, conniver. So they said, spend this money, because they exchanged it aboard ship. They gave us this money from what they call the Banco di Monopoly. So I talked my way into having the guy accept the Banco di Monopoly money. And he was a little hesitant, but then one of the other shipmates came in, and he had some of the money too. So with two people telling this bartender that the money was good.
Right, he believed it.
Right. So the next morning on board ship, we're in the mess hall. A bosun's mate, he's kind of, wrangles everybody, keeps everybody in line. He comes in and he's cursing and yelling, if I catch the SOBs, I'm going to kill them. I said, what's the matter, Boats? He says, I went to the bar outside the gate here last night and decided to have a beer. And he says, I had a beer. I gave this guy a $20 bill, and he gives me change back with Monopoly money. He says, I couldn't convince him that the money was no good, so I had to stay there all night drinking my $20 worth of beers. So that night I went ashore again, and my division officer sees me in one of the restaurants we went to, and he says, "Mesiano, can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure, sir, what's up?" He says, I hear you've been spending Monopoly money on shore. I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Are you running into any problems?" I says, "No." I says, we told them a good story, they believed it. So he says, "Let me ask you one more question." I said, "Yes, sir, what's that?" He says, "You got any more?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Here, take whatever you need." So I imagine he had his stories to tell too when he went out.
Right.
So the rest of the cruise was uneventful, and I got orders. One day the captain of the ship came down. He says, "Mesiano," he says, "we'll send you back to the States. You're going to go back to the Naval Communication Station in Washington, D.C. And at that time it was in Cheltenham, Maryland, right outside of D.C. So I went back there, and they told me that the reason why I came back to Cheltenham was as soon as I had an opening for me, they were going to transfer me over there and have my shoulder operated on and fix it. So I said, "Fine." So I went to the Bethesda Naval Hospital, and after I was there about a month, and they operated on me and fixed my shoulder. And then they put me in a half a body cast from my neck and shoulder down to my waist. And in order to mobilize me, or immobilize me, they had a cutout in the middle of my stomach and had my hand sticking out of this cast. And everybody used to go out, and people asked me, what happened to you? I said, "Well, I had a major surgery and I had to take my arm off, but they managed to save my hand, and they attached it to my stomach, so at least I have use of my hand." So, that was another one of my stories. That
You were a jokester, weren't you?
Yeah. My mind is always going.
That's great.
So after I finished my tour back at Cheltenham, I got orders to go to Italy. So I went over to Italy, and by this time I moved up in rank, and I was able to bring my car over. I have it shipped over to Italy. So while I was in Italy, I picked my car up and used that to do a lot of touring around Italy, and that was nice. Not too many crazy escapades. I kind of toned down a little bit because I was making rank at the time, and I wanted to keep my nose clean.
Right.
So I was in Italy for a year and a half, and then I got orders to go aboard another ship, and that was called the Belmont, USS Belmont. It was another oceanographic and communications research ship. And by that time, I was a first-class petty officer. And we toured South Africa. And then while I was aboard that ship, we crossed the equator again, but this time over 00 longitude and 00 latitude, and got the distinguished honor of being called a golden shellback.
Oh.
So there's very few people
right.
anywhere that has that distinguished honor. So in Italy, again, I kind of toned myself down, although I had some escapades, but nothing really to worry about.
Did you travel a lot while you were in Italy?
Yeah, all over Italy. So
yeah.
Rome.
Did you have a group of friends that you went with, or did you just kind of get in the car and take off by yourself?
Well, I had one friend of mine who was real close, he was stationed in the Air Force. We had the Air Force on the base, and he lived on the base with his family. So we became good friends. I used to spend a lot of nights over at his house. And while I was there, I said, I really can't afford to go out with my car. I need to get some more money. So I went to work at the NCO club as a waiter. And got to wait there, waiting on tables, and then I said, well, there's got to be a way, because sometimes the food would take all night, all a long time to get the food up, and then I'd have to go get drinks at the bar. So what I did was, I found out what the cooks would like to drink, and I used to buy them beers. So whenever I gave them an order, my order came up, pretty quick. And then the same thing, I found out from the bartenders what they liked, and I used to order them pizza or a sandwich or something like that. So whenever I ordered drinks, my drinks always came early.
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's smart. Then you get better tips because you're bringing out the food faster, right?
Well, other people are sitting there waiting for their food.
Right, wondering how you got yours so fast.
So after served my time aboard ship, we went all the way down to Cape Town. And while I was there, again, I go out with a group of guys. We were partying and got into a car accident. And I had a couple of stitches in my forehead. It was I think 6 or 8 of us sitting in a little Volkswagen.
Oh my gosh.
And the driver smashed into a light pole. So we were there, and somebody had seen the accident, and he said it was like a circus. Because the doors flew open, and then here's 6 or 8 guys climbing out of a Volkswagen. Well, then it was time for me my enlistment was up. My 8 years enlistment was up. So they flew me back from Cape Town up to Johannesburg, and then from Johannesburg caught another flight going to the States. But we had a hedge hop, what I call hedge hop, across Africa, all these little towns and stops along the way until we got to Europe, and then from Europe, from Frankfurt, then we flew to London, and then from London caught a flight going back to the States. So I was like 2 days flying in order to get home.
Right.
So it's quite an experience, all these different stops we made.
That's what I was going to ask you. So you made all these different stops. Where was your favorite? What of all your traveling that you did while you were in 8 years, what was your favorite place to be?
Italy, because I was able to, on my own, be able to get out and meet a lot of interesting people. And
did you have a favorite town in Italy that you preferred over?
I used to go to Venice. Naples a lot.
Okay.
And I met some American tourists up there. And I found out they owned a bar back in Queens in New York City. And while I was there and while I met them, I took them around. We visited Mount Vesuvius and a few other stops around Naples.
Right.
So they told me they were flying back to the States. They gave me their address and phone number, and they said, well, when you come back, stop in. They owned a bar in Queens, like I said.
Yeah.
So I went there a couple of times.
Excuse me.
And introduced the place to a couple of my friends. So it's like, mutual understanding.
Yeah.
And let me see what else happened.
Did you keep in touch with a lot of the people that you had met at your different places at like Germany and Italy? And did you keep in touch with anybody else?
I've got 2 close friends. One was a friend of mine. He lived in New York. In fact, both guys. One guy lives in Staten Island.
And they were both in the service with you?
Yeah, we were stationed in Germany together. And the other guy that I know is real close. He lives in Brooklyn, and we stay in touch to this day.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so we catch up on some old time stories and the funs and the
Right,
different people we met.
right, right.
So uh, the friend that I knew from Staten Island, he now lives in California. So in fact, after I got out of the service, we kept in touch, and he said he just got back from California, and he says I have another job tentative uh, to go back to California to work with a new company. He says, I'm thinking relocating all my stuff over there. Would you be interested in going with me? So I said, sure. So we rented a U-Haul, packed up all our gear, our furniture and everything else, and hit the road. So we drove cross country. Took us about a week, making stops along the way.
And you were
night.
out of the service by this
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
right? Yeah. That was a lot of time to reminisce about being in the service, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the only incident we had going across country, we were coming down this steep incline with a U-Haul trailer behind us, and the desert floor was down below us, and the winds were blowing, and I was driving at the time, and the trailer kept swinging back and forth, and I lost control of the car,
Oh,
put my brakes on, and stopped on the edge of the road, the front end of the car just over the side where a big drop-off was. So luckily we survived that and was able to call a U-Haul
right.
store. I think the nearest town was like in Barstow out in California. And they came out with a truck the next morning. And we transferred all our stuff from the trailer into a truck. And luckily, we didn't lose any furniture. I had a big credenza, and that had split from the bottom all in one piece.
Mm-hmm.
But I salvaged that, and when I got back to where we were going to live in California, I put it back together, just glued it all back together again, and so that was good. Didn't have to
Right.
lose anything.
So you kept in touch with some friends. All the time that you were traveling, Germany, Italy, how did you keep in touch with family and stuff back home? Did you?
Writing letters.
Writing letters, yeah.
Didn't have a phone at the time.
Right, right. So was it like a mail call type thing where you were on post or did you have your own mailbox or?
They had a little post office on the station, and you just went in there and they had assigned mailboxes.
Right. So you were in before Vietnam. So you got out then. What did you think when Vietnam started?
Well, I kept counting my blessings because I said
That
I'm
you
glad
were
I'm not going there.
Right, right.
Because I don't think I worked with a lot of classified materials,
Right, for being
messages and whatnot,
communications.
so I didn't think I had any opportunity. You weren't going to send me to Vietnam.
Right. And so I want to know a little bit more about your job in the military, the communications. Tell me a little bit more about what exactly you did. Maybe your a day in the life of you being in communications.
Day in the life of me. Well, my my rating was called communications technician at the time. Today they call that job cryptology technician. So I handle a lot of cryptographic communications. And if I told you, then I'd have to kill you.
Yeah.
So that's basically all I can tell you about it. And
Okay.
It was interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So your 8 years was up and you were getting out of the military.
All right.
So were you excited? Was it bittersweet? How did you feel about actually getting out?
No, in fact, when my time was up, like I said, I had 8 years in at the time, and I was approached if I wanted to re-enlist. If I wanted to re-enlist, it'd be for another 4 years. And I said, that's giving up 12 years of my life in the military service. I said, I really don't want to make a career out of it. So I decided to get out and see what I could do.
Yeah. Was it hard then to adapt from going 8 years of military life to now being a civilian?
No.
No.
I'm easy to get along with.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell. And right now, are you a member of any veteran organizations?
American Legion.
American Legion. Are you active with them?
Well, I can't get out.
Yeah.
But when I was active, I became the post commander.
Oh, all right. That's good.
Yeah.
So you started to tell me a little bit about when you got out of the service and you traveled cross country. And what did you do for work then?
Well, after I got out, I went back to school for a while under the GI Bill, and I was working downtown Manhattan, and I went to work for a stock brokerage because I had all my communications background.
Right.
And when my buddy and I moved out to California, when I got out there, I was looking for some work to do. I went to work for another stock brokerage out on the West Coast, and I didn't like it. I said, "There's really no money in this." So I applied for a couple of jobs, and one of the jobs was working for a chain out there called Carl's Jr. Restaurants. I started out as an assistant manager, worked my way up to become a manager, and then after a couple of years I became district manager at 6 restaurants that I was in charge of. So I worked for them until I was getting ready to, I had 2 kids at that time. That's where I was working. That's where I met my wife out in California.
That's what's going to be one of my questions too.
She was originally from Illinois, and I met her out there, and we got married and had 2 kids. And as the kids were growing up, because of the smog and the lousy weather where we lived, we decided we didn't want to live there anymore. The kids were always sick with nose and throat ailments and whatnot. So we bought a trailer and hit the road. And I says, well, I drove cross country one time. We can do it going back. So we loaded up, sold all our furniture that we had, packed what we wanted to keep into the trailer, and headed cross country. And, no big memorable stories to tell about that, except it was the experience for the girls.
Sure, yeah.
Like we went up to went through the 4 corners of the United States.
Yeah.
And my one daughter, she was about 4 at the time, she was starting to get into gymnastics. So to her, to be excited was to be able to put 2 of her hands behind her back and 2 of her legs, one in each corner of the 4 states.
Right.
So that was an
That's
experience
cute.
for her. Then we went up and saw Mount Rushmore. And where was that? South Dakota. And my youngest daughter at the time kept calling it Mount Mushroom. But she didn't say Mount Rushmore.
Right.
Called it Mount Mushroom. And then we made a few more stops coming across the country. We were in no rush. And we had a tentative job because we had spent some time in Denver, Colorado, and went to work for a KOA, Kampgrounds of America there. My wife worked during the day and I worked there during the nights. So we got a tentative job recommendation that they had an opening if we were interested down in Florida. So we started heading cross country and we're going to go down to Florida. But we got word that her grandmother was visiting with her folks here in Illinois, and her grandma wasn't doing too well. So we said, well, we'll make a slight detour and head up towards Illinois. she had some more grandparents living up in the north woods of Wisconsin, so we went and saw them, spent about a week with them, then headed down south here to Illinois, visited with her grandma, who wasn't doing too well, so we visited with her folks. And then we decided, no, we don't want to go down to Florida. So we found an apartment here in Illinois in Schaumburg. I lived in Schaumburg for a couple of years, and then looked around, decided we're going to stay, and bought a condo in near Hanover Park in Schaumburg, and lived there. In fact, while we were living there, my wife decided, for whatever reason, that she wanted a divorce, so I gave her a divorce. And
How long were you married?
total of 22 years.
Okay.
So we got a divorce, and then of course I had to support the kids. And I found a job starting out working for Burger King here in the area. In fact, it was just south of here. And I worked for them for a while and found out there was really no future for me there. So I saw an advertisement in a newspaper for a warehouse and distribution manager in warehousing. So I applied for the job. They liked my background and offered me the position. So I went to work for them. And it was good. It was interesting. Challenges. That's what I liked. You know, the things with a challenge,
Right.
instead of the same mundane type of job all the
Sure.
time. So after I was there 19 years, my boss came out to me. He says, "Come out to the warehouse. I need to talk to you." I says, "Okay." I went out there trying to figure out what did I do wrong. So he said, that's why I asked him. He said, "Oh, no." He says, "The information I have to pass on." He says, "You probably won't like it, but we're closing the office here, moving everything back to my home office in Akron, Ohio." And I had been to Akron for lots of times for seminars and meeting people and whatnot. And I says, "No," I says, "I'm really not into going to Akron." I says, I'll try my best. You know, I think I have enough experience in my life where I can find a job somewhere." So I took my leave of absence with them. You know, got a nice severance bonus that helped me along. I went out looking, and I found another company in Bensonville. They were looking for a warehouse manager to help coordinate shipments. So I said, "Well, I got all that experience." So I applied for that, and they hired me. So I was with them for 3 years, and then that's when I turned 62, and I says, "Oh, time for me to retire." So that's when I retired, and left with on a good standing.
Yeah. So I want to know what your thoughts are now about the military. Are you glad? Are you glad you did it? Are there days you wish you missed? I mean,
No,
what are
of
your
course I
thoughts?
miss it. I met a lot of interesting people.
Yeah.
My thoughts are, if anybody sees this and you have the opportunity to join the service, make the best of it. Do what you can, keep your nose clean, and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You learn a lot. If you put your mind to it, you can learn a lot. Yeah, because I remember the saddest part is one Friday afternoon we were standing inspection when I was stationed in Washington area. When we got notification, somebody came out and told the commanding officer, just got word that Kennedy had been shot. So that was a big disappointment.
Yeah.
You know, it really hit me, somebody shot the president.
Right.
Because years later, when I got out, was living back in New York. I had the chance. I went on vacation and went down to Texas again, and was in Dallas, visiting in Dallas, and visited the grassy knoll and the book depository where they believe that Oswald had shot Kennedy.
Right.
Visited the grassy knoll, so that was all interesting visiting that. So I've had a lot of interesting opportunities in my years, different places.
What's your feeling about war? I mean, everything that's going on right now, Iraq, Afghanistan.
It's totally terrible. The Iraqis, whatever their thoughts are, I know we've got a strong military, but I don't think we have a strong enough man in charge, president in charge, to lay down the line and say, this is a line in the sand, you cross it, you're in trouble, and then stand by it.
Yeah.
No one likes war, but if need be, if I wasn't too old, I'd sign up again.
Right. So is there anything that we haven't talked about? Is there any more stories you want to share? Is there any, winding it up, is there anything else that you want to share with this is going to be archived for future generations. What do you want to say to your great granddaughter who finds this online and is watching right now?
Well, if somebody that you know wants to join the military, or even yourself, it's a great opportunity to learn things. Find a career in the service, they'll train you, and move on from there, and then use that experience to make something of your life. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for women today in the services, either in medical field, nursing, or communications, or like women, they did the Second World War, they taught them how to fly planes and whatnot.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of letting things, turn you away because you think you're a woman or a young lady.
What about your great grandson? What do you say to him?
I tell him, think about what your thoughts are about serving your country. There's always something that you can join within the military to do your service to your country, but do it honorably. Don't be afraid to do your duty if it's necessary at the time. Be proud of what you do. Don't let people, tell anything different, because I know throughout the years, after the Second World War, the veterans were all honored greatly when they came home. But after Vietnam, a lot of the veterans coming home were spit upon and degraded and everything else. But be strong, have a strong backbone, be proud of what you did. That's the important thing.
Yeah. All right, Rick, anything else you want to say today?
No, that's it.
You shared it all?
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of Unity Hospice, thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for doing this interview with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.